So, kind of scrolling through Twitter moments ago. It's about 6:57 in the evening on this Monday. But scrolling through Twitter, I noticed a little something. One of the people I follow, ScurvyPiratehog, I think that's their name, put up a post that I think you would find really intriguing. And what I mean by that is basically it's kind of a two-picture deal. The first picture has an image of when Sally first becomes Mecha Sally, and then below it is an image of Amy Rose as Rusty Rose in Sonic Prime. Now you're probably wondering, okay, why bring this up? Why would ScurvyPiratehog on Twitter bring this up or point this out? Well, it's real simple. He has an image of Dr. Gubenstoff, or basically the arch villain, if you will, of the arch villain of Perry Platypus and Phineas and Ferb, Dr. Fuberstoff, whatever his name is. Okay, the doctor guy, the mad scientist guy, or at least the wannabe one. He has an image of him in front of a bunch of robots. And then on top of that, he has a saying. And that saying is this. And I'll probably link it. You'll probably see it here in the video as well. The saying is, if I had a nickel for every time a love interest of Sonic had turned into a robot working for Eggman, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot. But it's weird. It happened twice, right? Let me reread that. Basically, what they said with this image is, if I had a nickel for every time a love interest of Sonic had turned into a robot working for Eggman, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. Now, you're probably wondering why he brought that up. Well, obviously, if you have early access to Sonic Prime or you've seen the trailers, you'd know that one of the alternate versions of Amy Rose is known as Rusty Rose, basically a half-robotic cyborg, a la almost kind of akin to Bunny Rabbit, but apparently, from those that have seen it early already, she is actually working for Eggman, well, at least for the time being. But, why would they make this comparison, you might ask? Because I think what it is to ScurvyPiratehog, and I'm sure he's not alone in this, is it's kind of weird that in 2 separate mediums of Sonic outside of the games, 2 characters that would be considered love interest, one a love interest that he's had for about over 20 years, going on 30 next year, well actually 30 this year with the comics, and 30 years next year with Sat AM and the official run of the comics from Archie. That love interest, of course, being Sally. And then, of course, you have Amy Rose, who was brought into the picture as a fangirl, but over time, depending on who was the writers in the comics and the medium and SEGA kind of going back and forth, has kind of been teased more along the lines of as a potential love interest for Sonic in recent years. But the reason he brings it up is, again, he finds it kind of weird, and like I said, I'm sure he's not alone in this, that you have 2 love interests of Sonic basically roboticized, or have been roboticized, turned into cyborgs, if you will, working for the enemy. Now, I think the obvious question is, why would SEGA allow this in any shape or form? Well, again, I think it's a loophole. I think the loophole that they have with, allowing this to happen is it can only occur on the condition that it's temporary. In other words, the characters, don't stay that way for too long. The Mecha Sally arc, I've said it before, I said it again, others pretty much agreed with me on this, went way too long, longer than it should. But I'm assuming Ian Flynn let the SEGA representatives know that, yeah, it's only a temporary deal. It won't be as long as you think it is. I have a plan, but apparently that plan got interrupted, and so he had to basically, improvise at the last moment, as we all know. But Amy Rose being Rusty Rose, that's kind of a unique change to a Sega character. But again, I think it's allowed because it's only a one-time deal. It's temporary. It's not a permanent deal where she's gonna, be half robotic and cyborg for the rest of the entire franchise, if you will, outside of, the cartoon and the game, outside of this cartoon. It's not like you're gonna see Rusty Rose appear in a game and all that. No, I mean, Sega, let's be honest, has shown a little bit more leeway. I mean, they wouldn't allow Sonic's friends to be in the situation that they are, again in Sonic Frontiers, basically kind of caught between cyberspace and the real world, almost like basically caught between, the living and the dead, if you will. They wouldn't allow that to happen if people like Ian Flynn and the other writing team behind Sonic Frontiers wouldn't have guaranteed them that it's a temporary deal. But yeah, it is kind of weird when you really think about it that, not, and get this, okay? So as I've talked about before, it's going to be, basically next year is going to be a decade since the Mecha Sally arc ended, right? And that last year and throughout this year marked a decade since it happened. Isn't it kind of weird that within the span of the decade that it occurred in fully, that was, full throttle on, if you will, that a decade later, 10 years later, you kind of have something in the eyes of a lot of fans being similar, with Amy in an alternate universe being this Rusty Rose character? It's kind of weird, isn't it? Kind of weird that a decade ago you had it happen to Sally, and now a decade later you're having it happen to Amy Rose. But again, there's the loophole that it's only temporary and it's not permanent. And I think that's what's allowing, the writers like Ian Flynn in the comics, allowing the writers here on, Sonic Prime to get away with what they want. It's only temporary. It's not full time. And I can tell you this honestly, and this is just my own speculated opinion. I can tell you honestly, I don't think Sega liked the idea of Sally being, mechanized, roboticized weaponized for as long as she was, when that whole arc happened about a decade ago, I should say. I guarantee you, some of the Sega representatives that were there at Archie Comics overseeing this weren't too thrilled with it. Even though people would say they don't, Sally was not as important as she was before, I guarantee you there were some at Sega that still valued Sally and still value her to this day, that were not keen on her being roboticized, for that long. But I think, again, Ian Flynn would have to reassure him, I'm assuming when they would ask, how, like us, the fans, I'm sure those representatives asked him, okay, how long is it going to be till she's restored? Ian probably had to tell him, hey, it's not going to be that much longer. It's going to happen. Don't worry. It's not going to be that longer. It's going to happen. And I'm assuming here, Sega doesn't want to take a chance. And they're like, okay, you can do this, but it cannot be permanent. It cannot be a permanent thing. It's got to be, a what-if alternate scenario and a one-time deal. Let's not see it again. That's what I'm thinking. But yeah, ScurvyPiratehog, to get back on topic here, finds it kind of weird that almost within the span of a decade, you've had it happen twice to two of Sonic's love interests. And, I don't blame him for feeling that way or looking at it that way and others looking at it that way. But I think when you look at the overall tone, as IGN, kind of pointed it out in their review, basically, the moral lesson overall in this series for Sonic is, when it comes to your enemy like Eggman, that despite how many times you've beaten him, stopped him from conquering the world, changing reality, you still have to take him seriously. You cannot just yawn and be like, yeah, whatever, I'll just beat you like that, be overconfident, because it'll come back to bite you. And that's the lesson that's basically being taught here. That Sonic has to learn that whether he likes it or not, he cannot rush into anything anymore, and he's got to take enemies like Eggman, despite how many times he's beaten them, very seriously. Or there will be consequences like a Rusty Rose, or as we saw a decade ago in the comics, a Mecha Sally. And you know what? That even makes me wonder if they took inspiration from the Archie books as well to, go the mechanized route with Sonic's friends in this one alternate world. Makes you wonder. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here, talk about that, point that out. I will provide the images in the video. But yeah, it is kind of weird. It is kind of weird when you think about it. That, within the span of a decade, you've had the two major love interests, depending on how you view it as a fan, be mechanized in servitude to Eggman. So, well, that's how, ScurvyPiratehog's putting it. Although I think the servitude that Rusty Rose, Amy Rose, in this alternate universe has towards Eggman is temporary. But we'll see. But let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think ScurvyPiratehog has a point that is kind of weird that this has happened twice already in the span of a decade? Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, like the video, and this will be an audio podcast on the BW Roses Discussion Podcast. And until then, I will talk to y'all later.